This is the great American movie Nolan made his interstellar crew sit through before they shot a single frame. Another has David Bowie staring down a prison camp commander like he's from another planet. These are 10 must-see 80s sci-fi movies Christopher Nolan recommends. Number 10, Death Watch.
He stopped, my friend, and the pygmy studied him.
In a future where disease is rare, TV decides the only thing left to sell is death. Catherine is dying and doesn't know the world is watching her last days through Harvey Keitel's wired-up eyes. His character literally sees for the camera, turning every private moment into a feed. The worse she gets, the higher the ratings climb. Sound familiar? Nolan loves films that, in his words, prompt thought instead of telling you what to think. And Death Watch does that with reality TV before reality TV existed. It asks how far you'd let media go if the show was good enough. Would you change the channel or lean in? No big explosions, no cool gadgets, just a quiet horror, people becoming content. You can feel this idea's DNA in Nolan's own work, from invasive tech in The Dark Knight to his obsession with surveillance and control. If you want an 80s sci-fi that saw where we were headed long before social media, this is the one you queue up when the house is dark. Number 9, Dreamscape.
In other words,
he's worried about who's stripping his wife.
A government lab, a psychic drifter, and a machine that lets you walk into someone else's dreams. What could possibly go wrong? Dennis Quaid's Alex starts as a con artist using his gift for cheap scams, until the state drags him into a secret program. At first, they treat nightmares like therapy sessions. Then someone realizes you could slip into the president's head and kill him from the inside. That's when it changes from trippy to lethal. Nolan has talked about how Inception grew out of his love for Cold War thrillers and 70s/80s genre films that mix paranoia with spectacle. Dreamscape feels like that exact ancestor. Shared dream spaces, literalized fears, a government that thinks weaponizing the subconscious is just another line item. You can see the clunky rubber monster version of ideas Nolan would later polish into hallway fights and folding cities. If you've ever watched Inception and wondered what the VHS rough draft looked like, this is the messy, charming answer. Number 8, Iceman.
How long's it been here?
It's old ice.
Scientists pull a prehistoric man out of Arctic ice like a time capsule, then realize the specimen is staring back. What do you do when your discovery starts feeling like a person instead of a project? They call him Charlie. Timothy Hutton's Dr. Shepard is the only one who treats him as more than data, while everyone else debates tests, funding, and ownership. John Lone plays Charlie with fear, curiosity, and flashes of humor that punch straight through the makeup. Nolan loves films that treat extreme situations with dead serious realism, the way he praises The Right Stuff and For All Mankind for taking spaceflight out of pure heroics. Iceman gives that same weight to Contact across 30,000 years. The question quietly shifts from, how did he survive, to, do we deserve him? No lasers, no time portals, just parkas, rituals, and two people trying to talk across an impossible gap. If you connect with the way Interstellar treats its astronaut as both subject and fragile human, this is the icy 80s mirror. Number 7, Brainstorm.
There's something wrong with you. You know that?
You didn't likely.
Think of a headset that doesn't just record what you see, but exactly what you feel. Would you dare play back someone else's pain or their last breath? In Brainstorm, Christopher Walken's Michael helps invent a device that captures full sensory experience and lets another person relive it. Natalie Wood plays his estranged wife, pulled back into his orbit as the tech scales up from toy to weapon. When a colleague records her own death, Michael becomes obsessed with replaying the tape, chasing the moment consciousness slips away. Nolan talked about how films like 2001 and Bad Timing blew his mind by bending time and memory on screen. Brainstorm leaves in that space. Jump cuts, warped sound, and POV sequences that feel like an early, chaotic cousin to the way Inception and Memento mess with subjectivity. It isn't neat, but it's fearless about asking what happens when privacy dies completely. If the idea of sharing a mind both fascinates and scares you, keep watching. The next picks only get stranger. Number 6, Outland.
Something deadly is happening.
Take a classic Western standoff, strip out the sunsets, and drop it on a grim mining station orbiting Jupiter. How long would you last, as the only honest cop in a place built to chew people up? Sean Connery's marshal arrives expecting routine duty, and instead finds workers dying under mysterious conditions. The truth is uglier. A stimulant keeps miners productive until it quietly destroys them, and management wants the problem buried with the bodies. No heroic squad, no backup, just one man, a corrupt system, and a clock ticking toward open violence. Nolan constantly praises world building you can believe in, the battered hardware of Alien, the rain-soaked streets of Blade Runner. Outland shares that used future feel, cramped corridors, filthy mess halls, pressure suits that look like they barely pass safety checks. You can sense the DNA of this kind of claustrophobic thriller in the way Dunkirk builds tension around simple, brutal math. If you like your sci-fi with unions, bad bosses, and airlocks, this one hits like a slow, cold punch. Number 5. The Quiet Earth.
Come on, I know someone's in there!
You wake up, walk outside, and realize the world hasn't ended. It's just emptied. No bodies, no alarms, just silence and sky. What's scarier, dying, or living like that forever? Bruno Lawrence's Zack stumbles through a deserted New Zealand, testing the limits of no consequences, living before the dread really sets in. Stores stay stocked, lights still burn, but every echo reminds you there's nobody to hear you scream. When other survivors finally appear, the story shifts into something tougher. Guilt, responsibility, and what you owe a world that might be collapsing for a reason. Nolan has called space documentaries incredible for how they capture the loneliness of looking back at Earth. The Quiet Earth switches that gaze. Earth looks fine, but you feel emotionally airlocked. That mood is straight in line with the lonelier stretches of Interstellar and the way Oppenheimer lingers on one man's private apocalypse. If you love these kinds of deep dives into the movies that shaped directors like Nolan, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Number 4. The Lathe of Heaven.
Shall we run off a dream?
Okay.
Every time you fall asleep, the world rewrites itself to match your dream. Everyone else thinks it's always been this way. How long before you're more afraid of dreaming than dying? George Orr has that problem. His psychiatrist, Dr. Haber, figures it out and treats him like a living world engine. End racism, fix overpopulation, solve the climate. Each cure twists reality into something stranger, while only George remembers the versions they erased. Nolan loves stories about power and responsibility, which is why he keeps coming back to war films that refuse easy heroes. The Lathe of Heaven does that with pure idea-driven sci-fi. Just two men in rooms, quietly deciding what billions of people will never know they lost. The effects are bare bones, but that puts every ounce of pressure on performance and concept. Exactly the kind of economy Nolan admires in films like 12 Angry Men. If you enjoy the philosophical side of Inception more than the hallway fights, this is the unnerving 80s thought experiment waiting in the shadows. Number 3. The Hidden.
I want this car.
Jonathan Miller would never do anything to break the law.
A normal guy snaps, robs a bank, steals a Ferrari, and dies in a hail of bullets. Then something slithers out of his body and crawls into someone else. Still sure you know who the bad guy is? The Hidden starts as a hard-edged LA cop thriller, then reveals its secret. A parasite that jumps from host to host, partying and killing its way across the city. Michael Nuri's worn-out detective just wants the nightmare to end. Kyle MacLachlan's FBI agent wants something else entirely. Nolan loves crime stories wearing stranger skins, from Heat to the way The Dark Knight turns a superhero film into a citywide manhunt. The Hidden does that with aliens, practical car carnage, shotgun blasts, and an undercurrent of questions about identity and justice. If your body can change, but your choices don't, who are you really? It's loud, fast, and weirdly thoughtful underneath the explosions. Exactly the kind of B-movie puzzle Nolan has called criminally underappreciated in other directors' work. Number 2, The Brother from Another Planet.
What do I want, or what do I want that you can afford?
An alien crashes in New York Harbor looking like an ordinary black man, can't speak, and can fix machines with a touch. How do you learn a planet when nobody listens to you, even when you're standing right there? Joe Morton's brother drifts through Harlem, reading the city with wide, wary eyes. He never says a word, but you feel every reaction: the kindness, the scams, the racism, the grind of people living one step from collapse. The sci-fi is simple. The social commentary is not. Nolan has huge respect for films that show systems crushing people without turning them into speeches, the way he praises the Battle of Algiers, or All Quiet on the Western Front. The brother from another planet pulls that off on a tiny budget, using an outsider from space to ask who counts as an outsider on Earth. If you like how Interstellar and Oppenheimer smuggle intimate relationships into huge ideas, this is the 80s movie that does it with bar rooms, subways, and one very lost visitor. Number 1. Altered States.
We could be screwing around with this whole genetic structure. Now, how do we stop this?
A scientist decides the best way to understand human consciousness is to drug himself senselessly and lock his body in a tank. What could go wrong when your lab experiment starts rewriting your cells? William Hurt's Jessup chases ultimate truth like an addiction. Each trip in the sensory deprivation tank pushes him further from normal reality, until hallucinations smash into his biology and he begins to physically regress. By the time the film hits full meltdown, it's less about answers and more about whether he'll survive his own curiosity. Nolan loved pure cinema swings, like 2001 and The Tree of Life, movies that risk losing you to show something you feel more than understand. Altered States is the sweaty, unfiltered 80s cousin to that: practical effects, wild editing, sound that makes your skin crawl. It's not tidy, but the commitment is absolute. Drop your pick in the comments, and if this helped you get deeper than the usual 80s sci-fi list, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next movies that shape Nolan, and might just reshape your own watch list.